Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earthship Thunder, staring out at the endless stars. He had been commanding ships for 15 years, but he still felt small when he looked into deep space. The communication officer turned toward him with wide eyes. "Captain, we're getting a message from the Galactic Council. It's marked as Priority 1. Jake raised an eyebrow. In the 300 years since humans had discovered faster-than-light travel, they had barely spoken to the major alien powers. Most of the galaxy treated Earth like a small backwater planet that didn't matter much. "Put it through, Lieutenant Brown." The main screen flickered to life. A tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 arms appeared. Jake recognized the species as Nexari, one of the most advanced races in the galaxy. The alien's voice came through the translators in perfect English. "Captain Morrison, I am Ambassador Veltar of the Galactic Council. We are sending you coordinates for Kepler Station. The Council has decided to invite Earth to participate in the Grand Strategic Conference. This is the first time in our history that we have included your species in such discussions." Jake tried to keep his face calm, but inside he was surprised. "What kind of conference, Ambassador?" "The galaxy faces a threat unlike any we have seen before. An ancient race called the Devourers has awakened from the galactic core. They are destroying entire star systems. Every major civilization must work together to survive this crisis." The screen showed images of dead solar systems. Where there should have been planets and stars, there was only empty darkness. Whatever these Devourers were, they ate everything in their path. "The conference begins in 1 week. You may bring 3 additional officers. Do not bring weapons or military ships. Kepler Station is neutral ground." The transmission ended. Jake stood quietly for a moment, then turned to his communication officer. "Contact Earth Command immediately. Tell them we need Commander Lisa Hayes, Dr. Alex Carter, and Lieutenant Paul Wright on the next transport ship." 3 days later, Jake met his team at Luna Station. Commander Hayes was Earth's best military strategist. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who could look at any battle and find ways to win. Dr. Carter knew more about alien biology than anyone else on Earth. Lieutenant Wright was young but brilliant at understanding how different military forces worked together. "Do we know anything more about these Devourers?" Hayes asked as they boarded their transport ship. "Not much," Jake replied. "Intelligence says they're ancient, older than any of the current galactic civilizations. They went to sleep in the galactic core millions of years ago. Now they're awake and hungry." Dr. Carter looked at the images from the dead systems. "They don't just destroy planets. They consume them completely. No debris, no radiation. It's like they never existed." The journey to Kepler Station took 4 days. When they arrived, Jake was amazed by what he saw. The station was massive, bigger than Earth's moon. Ships from dozens of different species were docked around it. Some ships looked like living creatures. Others were made of crystal or pure energy. Their small human transport looked tiny next to the alien vessels. Security officers met them at the docking bay. The aliens scanned them with strange devices and gave them translator units. The technology was far beyond anything humans had created. "Welcome to Kepler Station," said a robot-like being with 6 legs. "I am Protocol Officer Zix. You will be housed in Section 7 with the other minor species." Jake noticed the word minor. The aliens didn't hide their opinion about humans. They were taken to their quarters through long corridors filled with aliens Jake had never seen before. Some looked like giant insects. Others were made of what appeared to be living rock. A few seemed to be just floating energy patterns. Their rooms were small but comfortable. Each human had their own space, but they could meet in a common area. The walls showed views of space and the many ships around the station. That evening, they attended the opening ceremony in the Great Hall. Jake had never seen so many different species in one place. The hall was enormous, with seating for thousands of beings. At the center of the hall stood a massive holographic display showing the galaxy. Red areas marked where the Devourers had struck. Jake counted at least 50 dead systems, and the red was spreading. Emperor Zethkri of the Vexhai Empire spoke first. His people looked like they were made of living crystal. His voice rang like music when he spoke. "The Devourers threaten all life in the galaxy, but the Vexhai have survived for 10 million years. Our crystal worlds are impenetrable. Our fleets are mighty. We will defend what is ours." Queen Mother Hesara of the Zephyrians spoke next. Her species shared one mind across billions of bodies. When she spoke, Jake could hear thousands of voices at once. "The Zephyrian collective thinks as one. We move as one. We fight as one. No enemy has ever broken our unity. Admiral Nexfol of the Nexari Federation was third. His people had technology that seemed like magic to humans. The Nexari have shields that stop any weapon. Our energy cannons can destroy stars. We have defended this galaxy for 5 million years. One by one, the leaders of the major species spoke. Each one talked about their strength, their power, their long history of victory. They seemed to be competing to see who sounded the most impressive. Jake noticed that none of them talked about working together. Each species seemed to think they could handle the Devourers alone. When the ceremony ended, the human team returned to their quarters. Hayes sat down with her datapad and started making notes. "What did you think of all that?" Jake asked. "They're scared," she said simply. "All that talk about being strong and mighty. That's what people do when they're afraid and don't want to admit it." Dr. Carter pulled up biological data on his tablet. "I managed to scan some of the delegates during the ceremony. There's something odd about some of their readings, but I need more data to be sure." Lieutenant Wright was studying the holographic display images he had recorded. Their defensive positions don't make sense. They're protecting their own space, but they're leaving huge gaps between their territories. An enemy could slip through easily. Hayes nodded. "Tomorrow the real meetings begin. We need to listen carefully and learn everything we can. I have a feeling we're going to see things these ancient civilizations have missed." Jake looked out at the stars through their window. Somewhere out there, the Devourers were coming. The most powerful species in the galaxy were gathering to stop them. But something told him that all their power and advanced technology might not be enough. Maybe it would take a different way of thinking to win this war. Maybe it would take the perspective of newcomers who didn't know what was supposed to be impossible. The next morning, security escorts led the human team deep into Kepler Station. They passed through multiple security checkpoints, each one more advanced than the last. Jake counted 7 different scanning devices that checked their bodies, minds, and even their intentions. "The war room is the most secure location in the galaxy," explained their Nexari guide. "The information inside could change the course of civilizations." They entered a massive circular chamber carved from black stone. The ceiling showed a perfect replica of the galaxy above them, with millions of stars twinkling like diamonds. But Jake's attention was drawn to the center of the room, where a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy floated in the air. The map was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Green dots showed healthy star systems. Yellow dots marked systems under threat. Red dots were places the Devourers had already consumed. Jake could see the red spreading like a disease from the galactic core. Dozens of alien leaders stood around the map, each group staying close to their own kind. The crystalline Vexhi clustered together, their bodies reflecting the light from the holographic display. The Zephyrians moved in perfect coordination, like dancers following music only they could hear. The Nexari stood tall and proud, their advanced technology creating small energy fields around them. Emperor Zethkri stepped forward and touched the map. The display zoomed in on the Vexhi Empire's territory. Hundreds of crystal worlds appeared, connected by streams of light. "Behold the Crystal Fortress network," he announced. "Each world is protected by shields that grow stronger when attacked. Our hyperspace beacons allow instant communication across our entire empire. No force in the galaxy can break through our defenses." The other leaders murmured their approval. Jake watched as Hayes pulled out a small data pad and started taking notes. She was studying the beacon network, tracing the connections between the crystal worlds. Queen Mother Hesera was next. The map shifted to show Zephyrian space. Instead of individual planets, Jake saw massive structures that looked like living organisms floating between stars. "The Zephyrian collective operates as a single mind across 10 billion bodies," she said in her multi-voice harmony. "Our bioships can repair themselves and adapt to any weapon. Our coordination is perfect. We think faster than any computer and react as one." Dr. Carter leaned forward, apparently fascinated by the biological aspects of their technology. He asked quiet questions about how their shared consciousness worked and how their ships healed themselves. The Zephyrian seemed pleased by his interest and answered freely. Admiral Nexfol presented the Nexari Federation's defenses. Their territory was smaller than the others, but their technology was clearly the most advanced. Energy shields surrounded entire solar systems. Weapon platforms that could destroy planets floated in space like metal moons. "Nexari shields have never been broken," the Admiral declared. "Our energy weapons can penetrate any armor. We have fought and defeated every major threat to galactic peace for the last 5 million years." Lieutenant Wright asked questions about power consumption and energy distribution. The admiral seemed amused by the young human's curiosity and explained how their fusion reactors could power shields and weapons simultaneously. One by one, the other species presented their defenses. The Corvani showed their time dilation weapons that could slow enemy ships to a crawl. The Melody demonstrated their sonic attacks that could shatter metal and scramble electronics. The Thrain revealed their living ships that could think and fight on their own. Each presentation was impressive. Each species had survived for millions of years by being stronger, smarter, or more advanced than their enemies. But Jake noticed something troubling. Every species was focused on protecting their own territory. None of them talked about working together. Commander Hayes walked slowly around the room, studying each display. She asked simple questions about supply lines, communication systems, and backup plans. The aliens seemed to think her questions were basic and unimportant. They answered her with the patience of adults talking to a child. "How do you coordinate with your allies during an attack?" she asked the Vexhai Emperor. "We do not need coordination," he replied with crystal pride. "Each crystal world can defend itself. We are strong enough alone." "What happens if your hyperspace beacon network is damaged?" she asked. "Impossible," the Emperor laughed. "The beacons are protected by the same shields as our worlds. Nothing can destroy them." Dr. Carter continued his biological studies, asking the Zephyrians about their hive mind. "What would happen if your command nodes were disrupted?" "The collective cannot be disrupted," Queen Mother Hesera replied. "We are one mind in many bodies. Losing a few nodes would be like losing a few cells. The whole remains strong." Lieutenant Wright questioned the Nexari about their energy systems. "How long can your shields operate at full power?" "As long as necessary," Admiral Nexvol answered. "Our reactors are the most efficient in the galaxy. We have never run out of power in battle." Jake watched his team work. To the aliens, they probably looked like students trying to understand advanced concepts. The human questions seemed simple and innocent. The alien leaders were happy to show off their superior knowledge and technology. But Jake knew his people better than that. Hayes wasn't asking random questions. She was building a complete picture of how each defense system worked. Dr. Carter wasn't just curious about biology. He was looking for weaknesses in living systems. Wright wasn't admiring the technology. He was calculating power requirements and finding limits. As the day went on, more species presented their defenses. The room filled with displays of incredible weapons, impenetrable shields, and unstoppable fleets. Each civilization had survived by being the strongest in their area of space. But Jake began to see the problem. These species were used to fighting enemies who were weaker than them. They had built their defenses to show their strength, not to cover their weaknesses. They were like separate kingdoms, each ruling their own territory, never needing to work together. The Devourers were different. They didn't care about showing strength or claiming territory. They just consumed everything in their path. They were a force that had slept for millions of years while these civilizations grew comfortable and proud. During a break in the presentations, the human team gathered in a corner of the war room. They spoke quietly, knowing that sensitive alien hearing might pick up their conversation. "This is worse than I thought," Hayes whispered. "They're not planning to fight together. Each species thinks they can handle the Devourers alone. Their biology is fascinating, but I'm seeing some concerning patterns," Dr. Carter added softly. "Some of the delegates are showing signs of parasitic influence. I need to run more scans to be sure. The power distribution doesn't add up," Wright said. "Their shields and weapons draw more energy than their reactors can provide for extended periods. They're counting on short battles." Jake nodded. "Keep learning everything you can. Tomorrow we'll see their actual battle plans." As they returned to their quarters that evening, Jake thought about what they had seen. The galaxy's greatest civilizations were preparing for war, but they were preparing to fight the same way they always had. They were ready to defend their own territories with their own strengths, but the Devourers weren't going to play by the old rules. They were an enemy unlike any these proud species had ever faced, and Jake was beginning to suspect that all the advanced technology and ancient wisdom in the galaxy might not be enough to stop them. It might take a different approach entirely. It might take the perspective of a young species that didn't know the rules, didn't respect tradition, and didn't mind asking uncomfortable questions. The war room held the secrets of the galaxy's greatest civilizations. But sometimes the most important secrets weren't what people wanted to protect. Sometimes the most important secrets were the things they didn't even know they were revealing. Back in their quarters, the human team worked through the night. Jake had ordered coffee from the station's food processors, though it tasted nothing like Earth coffee. The four humans sat around their small table, spreading out data pads and creating their own holographic displays, while the galaxy's greatest civilizations slept, confident in their ancient power. The newcomers from Earth were learning to see what everyone else had missed. Commander Hayes pulled up the data she had collected on the Vex-High Crystal Fortress network. The display showed hundreds of crystal worlds connected by hyperspace beacon streams. It looked impressive and unbreakable. "Look at this," she said, pointing to the beacon connections. "They're so proud of their instant communication system. But see how it's designed? Every beacon connects to 3 others, creating triangular patterns across their empire." Lieutenant Wright leaned in to study the pattern. "That's actually a weakness, isn't it? If you took out the right beacons, you could cut off entire sections of their empire from each other." "Exactly. And look where the central command beacons are located." Hayes highlighted several key points on the map. "They're all in the same star system, right at the heart of their territory. They put all their command structure in one place because they think it's the safest location." Dr. Carter was examining the biological data he had gathered on the Zephyrians. Their hive mind technology was fascinating, but he was seeing it from a medical perspective that the aliens hadn't considered. "The Zephyrians share one consciousness across billions of bodies," he explained. "They think this makes them unbeatable because they can coordinate perfectly. But from a biological standpoint, this creates a massive vulnerability." Jake set down his coffee cup. "What kind of vulnerability?" "They have central command nodes that process information for huge sections of their collective consciousness. Think of them like the brain centers of their hive mind. If something happened to those nodes, the connected bodies would lose coordination. They'd be like a person having a stroke." Wright was studying power consumption data from the Nixari Federation. His calculations covered 3 data pads, and the numbers were troubling. "The Nixari are lying about their energy systems," he said bluntly. "Not on purpose maybe, but they're definitely wrong about their capabilities. Their shields and weapons use enormous amounts of power. I ran the calculations 3 times. Hayes looked up from her work. "What did you find?" "Their reactors can power their shields at full strength for maybe 6 hours of continuous combat. If they're also using their main weapons, that drops to 2 hours. After that, they have to choose between shields or weapons, but they can't run both." Jake whistled softly. "Do they know this?" "I don't think so. They've probably never been in a battle that lasted more than a few minutes. Most of their fights are against weaker enemies who surrender quickly or get destroyed fast. They've never had to test their systems for extended periods." Dr. Carter had moved on to analyzing all the biological scans he had taken during the day. He was using pattern recognition software to look for anomalies. What he found made his blood run cold. "We have a bigger problem than weak defenses," he said quietly. "I've been analyzing biological readings from 17 different species representatives. 6 of them are showing signs of parasitic neural influence." The room went silent. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "You're saying some of the delegates are infected?" "Not infected exactly. It's more subtle than that. There are microscopic organisms in their brains that appear to be influencing their decision-making processes. The parasites are very small and very sophisticated. They're not controlling their host completely, just nudging their thoughts in certain directions." Hayes leaned back in her chair. "The Devourers are already here. They're not just coming from the Galactic core. They've already infiltrated the leadership of the major species." Wright pulled up the galactic map and started marking the territories of the species with infected delegates. "Look at this. If these leaders make the wrong decisions, they could sabotage the entire defense effort. The Devourers don't need to break through the defenses if they can convince the defenders to lower their shields." Jake stood up and paced around the small room. "This changes everything. The Devourers aren't just a mindless force that consumes planets. They're intelligent. They're strategists. They've been planning this for longer than we thought." Hayes pulled up tactical displays showing how the various species planned to defend their territories. Each species had strong defenses, but there were gaps between their territories. Places where no one was responsible for defense. "Look at how they've arranged their defenses," she said. "Each species is protecting their own space, but they're leaving corridors open between their territories. They think the gaps are too small for a major invasion force. But if the Devourers can influence the defenders," Wright began. They can create bigger gaps, Jake finished. Convince a few key leaders to pull back their fleets for routine maintenance or strategic repositioning. And suddenly you have highways straight to the heart of galactic civilization. Dr. Carter ran more analysis on his biological data. The parasitic influence is subtle enough that the infected leaders probably don't even know they're compromised. They think they're making logical decisions based on sound military strategy. The team worked until the early hours of the station's artificial morning. They built a complete picture of the galaxy's defenses, and it was even worse than they had feared. The great civilizations were strong individually, but they had never learned to work together. Their defenses had gaps that could be exploited. Their leaders were partially compromised by enemy infiltration, and their military strategies were based on fighting the kind of enemies they had always faced, not a force like the Devourers. "We need to present this to the Council," Jake said finally. Hayes shook her head. "They won't listen to us. We're just the primitive newcomers. If we accuse their leaders of being infected with parasites, they'll think we're trying to cause panic or gain advantage. So what do? We find a way to show them the truth without directly accusing anyone," Dr. Carter suggested. "Maybe we can frame it as a medical concern. Offer to scan everyone for biological threats as a precaution." Wright pulled up his power consumption calculations, "And I can present the energy distribution problems as technical assistance. Make it sound like we're trying to help them optimize their systems." Hayes studied the tactical maps one more time. "The key is showing them that their individual strengths become weaknesses when they don't coordinate properly. We need to demonstrate how an intelligent enemy could exploit the gaps in their defenses." Jake sat back down at the table. "Tomorrow is the final day of the conference. They're going to present their unified defense strategy and sign agreements. If we're going to act, it has to be then. Are we really going to challenge the greatest military minds in galactic history?" Wright asked. Hayes smiled grimly. "We're not challenging them. We're trying to save them. The question is whether they're smart enough to listen to advice from a species they consider primitive." Dr. Carter packed up his biological scanners. Sometimes an outside perspective can see things that experts miss. They're too close to their own systems to notice the flaws. As they finally went to their sleeping quarters, Jake thought about the next day. The human team had learned more about galactic military capabilities in 2 days than most species learned in centuries of warfare. But knowledge was useless if they couldn't convince anyone to act on it. Tomorrow, 4 humans from a backwater planet would try to show the galaxy's greatest civilizations that their ancient wisdom and advanced technology weren't enough. That sometimes the newest perspective could see the oldest problems. The war room had revealed every secret the galaxy's powers wanted to protect. But it had also revealed the secrets they didn't know they were keeping. And those hidden weaknesses might be exactly what the Devourers were counting on. The final day of the Grand Strategic Conference began with ceremony and confidence. The great leaders of the galaxy gathered in the war room to sign their defense agreements and coordinate their individual strategies. Each species would protect their own territory while maintaining communication with their allies. Jake watched the proceedings with growing concern. The aliens were making the same mistakes they had made for millions of years. They were thinking like separate kingdoms instead of one unified force. Emperor Zethkri of the Vexhai was explaining how his crystal fortress network would anchor the galactic defense. Queen Mother Hesara described how the Zephyrian Collective would provide perfect coordination within their territory. Admiral Nexeval outlined how Nexari energy shields would create an impenetrable barrier around their space. Each leader spoke with absolute confidence. Each species believed their ancient methods would be sufficient. The defense plan they were creating had impressive individual components, but Jake could see it wouldn't work as a whole. When the formal presentations ended, Emperor Zethkri looked around the room with satisfaction. "The galaxy has never seen such a comprehensive defense network. The Devourers will break against our combined might like waves against crystal cliffs." The other leaders nodded their agreement. Several species representatives were already preparing to sign the formal alliance documents. That's when Captain Morrison stood up. "Your Excellencies," he said in a clear voice, "might I address the Assembly before you finalize these agreements?" The room fell silent. Conversation stopped. Thousands of alien eyes turned toward the small human delegation. Jake felt the weight of their attention like a physical force. Emperor Zethkri's crystal body reflected the war room lights as he laughed. Captain Morrison, your enthusiasm is admirable. But what could a species that has barely left their home system possibly add to strategies developed over millions of years? Perhaps a fresh perspective, Your Excellence, Jake replied respectfully. Sometimes an outsider can see things that experts might miss. The Vexhai Emperor looked around at the other leaders. Several of them were smiling with amusement. Queen Mother Hesara spoke in her harmonic voice. Very well, Captain. The collective is curious to hear what new insights humans might offer. Jake nodded to Commander Hayes, who stepped forward to the central holographic display. She pulled out her datapad and connected it to the alien systems. Her own tactical analysis appeared in the air above them. Honored leaders, Hayes began, you have each built magnificent defenses, but I believe there are vulnerabilities in your strategies that the Devourers might exploit. The amusement in the room began to fade. Several alien leaders straightened in their seats. Hayes touched the display and the Vexhai Crystal Fortress network appeared. But now, instead of showing its strengths, her analysis highlighted the hyperspace beacon connections. Your Excellence Emperor Zethkri, the Crystal Fortress network is indeed formidable, but it depends entirely on your hyperspace beacon system for coordination and communication. Red markers appeared on specific beacons. If an enemy destroyed these 7 key beacons, your empire would be cut into isolated fragments that couldn't support each other. The Emperor's crystal face darkened. Impossible. Those beacons are protected by the same shields as our fortress worlds. But they're all in the same star system, Hayes continued calmly. An enemy with sufficient force could overwhelm that one location and cripple your entire communication network. Before the Emperor could respond, Hayes shifted the display to show Zephyrian territory. Her analysis revealed the locations of the hive mind's command nodes. Queen Mother Hesara, the collective's perfect coordination is your greatest strength, but coordination requires command processing centers. Red dots appeared at several locations. These biological command nodes process information for billions of your people. If they were damaged or destroyed, entire sections of your collective would lose coordination. The Queen Mother's thousands of voices buzzed with anger. The nodes are heavily defended and backed up multiple times. But they all use the same biological architecture, Dr. Carter interjected, stepping forward. A weapon designed to disrupt that specific neural pattern could affect multiple nodes simultaneously. The room was no longer amused. Angry murmurs rose from the alien delegates. But Hayes wasn't finished. She brought up the Nexari Federation's defensive grid. Lieutenant Wright's power consumption calculations appeared alongside the energy projections. Admiral Nexval, your shields and weapons are the most advanced in the galaxy, but they consume enormous amounts of power. The display showed energy flow charts and consumption rates. At full combat power, your systems can operate for approximately 2 hours before you must choose between shields and weapons. The Admiral stood up abruptly. Those calculations are classified information. How did you obtain our power specifications? You told us yesterday, Wright said simply. When I asked about reactor output and energy distribution, you were happy to explain your superior technology. I just did the math. Now the room erupted in angry voices. Multiple species were demanding to know how humans had obtained their classified information. Accusations of espionage and treachery filled the air. Jake raised his voice above the chaos. We didn't steal anything. We didn't hack your systems or break into your databases. You showed us everything willingly. You told us your capabilities, your positions, your strategies. You just never considered that someone might be listening not to copy your strengths but to identify your weaknesses. Hayes continued her presentation despite the angry voices. Each of your species has built defenses designed to showcase your individual power. You've never had to consider how those defenses might be exploited by an enemy that doesn't play by traditional rules. The display shifted to show the overall galactic defense plan. Red lines appeared between territories, highlighting the gaps in coverage. More importantly, you're all planning to fight separately, each species protecting their own territory, with minimal coordination between allied forces. You're leaving corridors of undefended space that an intelligent enemy could exploit to attack each of you individually. Emperor Zethkri's voice rang like breaking crystal. These are lies and propaganda. Humans seek to undermine our alliance for their own benefit. That's when Dr. Carter stepped forward with his medical scanner activated. Your Excellence, Before you accuse us of deception, there's something else you need to know. He held up his biological analysis device. I've been conducting medical scans throughout this conference with permission from station medical protocols. The scanner's display showed the biological readings Carter had collected. 17 different species were represented, and 6 showed clear signs of parasitic neural influence. Several delegates in this room are showing signs of microscopic neural parasites. These organisms appear to be influencing decision-making processes in subtle ways. The room exploded in outrage. Accusations flew in dozens of languages. Security forces moved toward the human delegation, but Dr. Carter continued speaking in a calm, professional voice. The parasites are so small and sophisticated that the affected individuals probably don't even know they're compromised. They would simply feel that certain tactical decisions seem more reasonable than others. He activated a holographic display showing microscopic organisms. These parasites match biological signatures associated with the devourers. They're not just coming from the galactic core, they're already here influencing your strategic planning. Queen Mother Hesara's voices suddenly harmonized in alarm. The collective. We sense something now that you've identified it. There are foreign thoughts in our network, subtle suggestions that we initially interpreted as our own tactical analysis. Admiral Nexvol ran his own medical scanners, designed to detect biological contaminants. His face went pale when he saw the results. By the void, there are traces of unknown organisms in my neural tissue. The chaos in the room began to change from anger to fear. Leaders were running their own scans, discovering the parasitic influence they had never noticed before. Hayes seized the moment. This is why your defensive strategies won't work. The Devourers aren't just a mindless consuming force. They're intelligent strategists who have been preparing for this war longer than any of our civilizations have existed. They've influenced your thinking, exploited your traditional tactics, and positioned themselves to defeat you individually. Jake stepped forward. We don't want to undermine your alliance. We want to save it. But first, we need to save you from the enemy that's already inside your heads. The room fell silent except for the humming of scanning devices as leaders and delegates checked themselves for parasitic infection. The grand strategy that had seemed so confident an hour ago now looked like exactly what the Devourers wanted them to do. The revelation was complete. The galaxy's greatest military minds had been outmaneuvered before the war even began, and it had taken a species of newcomers to show them how thoroughly they had been compromised. Now the question was whether it was too late to change course, or if the combined forces of the galaxy could still find a way to fight back against an enemy that had already gotten inside their minds. The war room had become a medical emergency center. Leaders from across the galaxy submitted to biological scans while their medical teams worked to identify and neutralize the microscopic parasites in their systems. Dr. Carter's discovery had changed everything in a matter of minutes. Emperor Zethkri sat in meditative silence as Vexi medical crystals purged the foreign organisms from his neural pathways. When the process was complete, his crystal body seemed to shine brighter, as if a shadow had been lifted from him. The influence was so subtle, he said in wonder. For months, certain tactical decisions seemed obviously correct. Pulling our fleets back from border systems for maintenance. Reducing communication with allied forces to maintain security. Now I can see how those choices would have left gaps in our defenses. Queen Mother Hesara's collective consciousness was undergoing its own purification process. Billions of Zephyrian bodies worked together to identify and isolate the compromised command nodes. The parasites were feeding false tactical assessments into our shared mind, she reported. We believed we were thinking more clearly than ever, when actually our judgment was being clouded. The Devourers were making us overconfident while subtly undermining our coordination. Admiral Nexvol was perhaps the most shaken by the discovery. His species prided themselves on their advanced technology, yet they had been completely unaware of the biological infiltration. Our medical scanners never detected the parasites because we weren't looking for something so small and sophisticated, he admitted. We've been making strategic decisions based on compromised thinking for at least 6 months. As the medical teams worked, Lieutenant Wright had connected his data pad to the war room's main display. He was showing the other delegates his analysis of the original defense plans. Look how perfectly the parasites influenced your strategies, he explained, highlighting specific tactical decisions. Emperor Zethkri, You were planning to concentrate your fleets around your core worlds, leaving your outer systems lightly defended. Queen Mother, the collective was going to reduce communication with other species during the crisis. Admiral Nexaval, you were going to operate your shields at reduced power to conserve energy for extended campaigns. The pattern was clear and terrifying. Each decision seemed logical when made in isolation, but together they would have created exactly the weaknesses the Devourers needed to exploit. Jake stepped forward as the room's attention focused on him. The parasites weren't controlling your minds completely. They were just nudging your thoughts toward strategies that seemed reasonable, but contained fatal flaws. You would have fought bravely and died heroically, never knowing why your perfect defenses failed. Commander Hayes brought up her own tactical analysis. But now that we know what we're really facing, we can create a strategy that actually works. The Devourers are intelligent and sophisticated, but they have weaknesses too. The holographic display showed the galaxy from a new perspective. Instead of separate territories defended by individual species, it showed interlocking defensive zones with overlapping coverage and mutual support. The key is integration, Hayes explained. Not just coordination between your forces, but actual integration. Vex-High crystal technology combined with Nexari energy systems. Zephyrian coordination enhanced by other species' tactical analysis. Each civilization's strengths covering another's weaknesses. Emperor Zethkri studied the new defensive layout. His crystal form was still glowing from the medical treatment. This would require unprecedented cooperation. We would have to share our most closely guarded secrets and technologies. More than that, Hayes replied. You would have to trust each other completely. No species can defend their own territory alone. Everyone depends on everyone else. Dr. Carter stepped forward with another revelation. There's something else we discovered about the parasites. They weren't just influencing your tactical thinking. They were also suppressing your ability to work together. The more infected a leader was, the less they trusted their allies. Queen Mother Hesara's voices harmonized in understanding. That explains our increasing isolationist tendencies. The collective was becoming more focused on self-reliance just when we needed cooperation most. Admiral Nexful nodded grimly. We were planning to share less information with our allies, not more. Each species was being driven toward fighting alone. Wright pulled up his power consumption calculations again, but this time they showed something different. If you integrate your energy systems instead of operating separately, the math changes completely. Nexari reactors powering Vex-High shields, crystal world generators boosting Zephyrian bioships, shared power grids that can't be overwhelmed. The display showed energy flowing between different species' territories, creating redundant power systems that could support each other during extended combat. Hayes continued the presentation. But integration isn't just about technology. It's about strategy. Instead of each species defending their own space, we create mobile task forces with mixed crews and combined technologies. The holographic galaxy transformed again. Instead of static defensive lines, it showed fleets moving in coordinated patterns, supporting each other, covering gaps and presenting no single point of failure to exploit. Vex-High crystal ships with Nexari shields and Zephyrian coordination, bioships with crystal armor and energy weapons. Every fleet becomes stronger than the sum of its parts. Jake watched the alien leaders studying the new strategy. He could see them beginning to understand the scope of what was being proposed. This isn't just about changing your tactics, he said. This is about changing how you think about war itself. The Devourers are unified, ancient, patient. They've been planning this for longer than most of your civilizations have existed. To beat them, you need to become something you've never been before. Emperor Zethkri was the first to speak. A truly unified galactic military force. Not an alliance of separate armies, but one integrated fighting force. With shared command structures, Queen Mother Hesara added. Combined technologies. Mixed crews who trust each other completely. Admiral Nexville looked directly at the human delegation. And strategic coordination by a species that sees weaknesses we miss and patterns we overlook. Hayes shook her head. Not coordination by humans, coordination by everyone. Each species contributes their unique perspective. We've shown you how to see your vulnerabilities, but you have wisdom and experience we lack. Together we can create something stronger than any of us could build alone. Dr. Carter activated one final display. The parasites also revealed something important about the Devourers themselves. They're not invincible, They need these infiltration techniques because they can't win through direct confrontation alone. If we can prevent their psychological manipulation, they become just another enemy that can be defeated. The room was quiet as the leaders considered what they had learned. 3 days ago, they had come to this conference as representatives of separate civilizations. Now they were being asked to become something entirely new. Emperor Zethkri stood up, his crystal body reflecting the light from the tactical displays. The Vexhai Empire agrees to full integration. Our crystal worlds, our fleets, our technology, everything will be shared with our allies. Queen Mother Hesara's voices sang in harmony. The Zephyrian Collective accepts this new unity. We will extend our coordination to all allied forces. Your thoughts will become our thoughts. Admiral Nexval nodded firmly. The Nexari Federation commits all our resources to this integrated defense. Our shields will protect everyone. Our weapons will serve the common cause. One by one, the other species added their agreement. The war room that had started the day planning separate defenses ended it, creating the galaxy's first truly unified military force. Jake looked around at the assembled leaders. The Devourers thought they knew how you would respond to their threat. They counted on your pride, your traditions, your isolation from each other. They never expected you to become something entirely different. Hayes brought up one last display showing the new integrated fleet formations. They've been planning this war for millions of years. But they've been planning to fight the galaxy as it was, not the galaxy as it could become. As the conference ended and the leaders prepared to return to their home worlds, Jake felt a mixture of hope and concern. They had created something unprecedented, a truly unified galactic defense. But the real test would come when the Devourers arrived in force. The humans had entered the war room as observers, representatives of a minor species barely worth acknowledging. They were leaving as partners in the greatest military alliance the galaxy had ever seen. But more importantly, they had helped the ancient civilizations of the galaxy discover something they had forgotten over millions of years of individual success. That sometimes the greatest strength comes not from standing alone, but from standing together. The Devourers were still coming. But now they would face not a collection of separate kingdoms, but a unified galaxy that had learned to see its weaknesses and transform them into strengths. And at the heart of that transformation was a simple truth that a young species had reminded their elder civilizations. In war, knowledge of weakness is often more valuable than demonstration of strength.